Okay, thank you very much and welcome everybody. And I mean, I guess with all the exciting stuff you've been having on the catwalk here, this may seem a little bit dry, but I think our panel is going to warm you up enormously. But can you hear me okay? Is it okay? I have this tendency to mumble and not speak clearly enough. Thank you for giving me the visual clues. So I'm just going to quickly introduce the panel. First we have Mark Bloom from Komodo. Then we have Bonnie Chan, and finally we have Natasha Nickson. Natasha Nickson's from the Soil Association certification. Bonnie is from Little Green Radicals, and Mark from Komodo. So what I'd like to do is ask them each to give you a couple of minutes, a minute, we've got to be fast, half a minute even, who you are and a little bit about Komodo. So over to you, Mark.
Okay, so I am Mark Bloom. I founded Komodo back in 1988. We started out, we grew out of acid house music. That was really where we came from, so we were very much a street fashion thing. But we grew out of Bali and Kathmandu, and so we were using a lot of patchwork and upcycled fabrics, and it taught us really how much better it was to be able to reuse things that had been used before. The language of recycle, sustainable, upcycle, that didn't really exist then. In those days, it was just called hippie, ethnic, grungy, streety, alternative clothing. But over time, the language emerged, and that's when we started to really understand more how it was being interpreted and what the future was. It gave us direction.
And you've been a long-term visitor to Pure, I know. I've seen you here for many years.
Yes, we have. We have held up the show for many years. And
Bonnie, tell me a little bit about Little Green Radicals and what your background is.
Hello, everybody. So my name is Bonnie, and I work for Little Green Radicals for nearly 19 years. So I started as a fashion student in London, and I was designing for women's wear. But back then, about nearly 20 years ago when I graduated, there was nothing about sustainability in my courses. And I was able to tap into Little Green Radicals at 2006. And it's just got me interested in organic fashion, fair trade certified cotton. And I started as just a customer service, just answering phone calls, packing orders. But it really has seen that over the last 19 years at working with them, how sustainability has grown, and my role has developed from packing orders to actually designing and working with suppliers and working with the certifications in terms of GOTS and in the fair trade certifications. And hopefully, just had a talk, listen to B Corp, so that's our aim as well. So that will be something that we love to investigate. So that's my role.
Great, thanks very much, Bonnie. And last but not least, Natasha. Tell us a bit about where you're from, what Soil Association certification does, and what your role is.
Yeah, so I'm Tasha. I work for Soil Association certification, as they said. So we certify businesses in the UK and around the world to GOTS, the Global Organic Textile Standard. So we help them from application and through to their certification, delivering their organic certification.
Great, thank you very much. And I guess I'll kick off with a brief introduction. I'm Christopher Stopes, UK representative from GOTS. I've got to really try and speak clear. You're my visual signal. If you can't hear me, I'm okay at the moment. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. The Global Organic Textile Standard is, as it says, it's a standard for organic textiles, and it's global. So it sort of does what it says on the tin. And what are organic textiles, I guess, is the thing I'd start off with, and then we'll go on the panel with, and to get them involved too and tell us more about the whole story. Organic textiles are essentially, fundamentally, textiles made from organically farmed fibre, grown on a farm, subject to organic farm certification, so organic produced fibre and organic appropriate processing in the factory, from the gin in the case of cotton right the way through to the finished item on the clothes rail. Or it's not only about fashion, that's the subject here, it's also about other textile products like home textiles, personal care products, many other products are included. So we're here talking about fashion, that's why we've got these great people here. But one way or another, what happens from the outset in giving the guarantee that the textile product you're buying has high environmental and social standards, it's inspected regularly, there's a whole system in place. It is that bit at the start which seems rather boring, but unless you have that, then you're not going to be able to stand up and proclaim that you have an environmentally just and a socially sound product that you're wearing or buying or choosing to use in whatever way you might. So, Natasha, I think to start this story, it'd be great to have a little idea of what the certification involves. It's sort of a big word, but within it contains the opportunity for you to sell your customers the promise that you are actually getting what you're asking for. So, Natasha, a few minutes on what certification is and what you do.
So it starts with a brand reaching out for interest in certification. We have a welcome call with them where we talk through all the areas of certification and everything that's covered in their first inspection. At Soil, you have a dedicated certification officer, so you have someone you can rely on to support you through your application journey. When you're ready to have your inspection, you have that, and it is one day. One of our inspectors comes and visits your premises. It usually involves a mass balance, so they look at all your incoming organic product and your outgoing organic product, a traceability exercise which follows one particular product all the way from where you've sold it back through to the manufacturer that you've purchased it from. And then, of course, it covers the social compliance and the environmental compliance that GOTS has requirements on, which involves interviews with members of staff that's confidential, but just to verify that those social compliance is being followed.
Excellent. I hope that was clear. I think it is quite a hard acoustic in here, so it's quite hard to hear what's being said, but we'll battle on as best we can. So that was the sort of boring bit, if you like. Excuse me, Natasha. The interesting bit and why you're here is because brands and retailers are increasingly looking for a GOTS certification because of the benefits it brings, not least through the system of traceability and assurance that Natasha and her team guarantee. So there's a question I'd like to put to both of you, really, and it's about thinking about your journey to have become GOTS certified. What have you learned, and what would you have done differently with all of that hard-won experience? Mark, over to you first. What would you have done differently now you know? Or has it all been smooth, plain sailing?
No, it's not so easy to get it and to hold it all together. You find things that you think you've passed the test here, and here, and then there's one little thing that's missing from the jigsaw, and that makes life very difficult. So you really have to dot all the I's and cross all the T's to comply. But we've learned as we've gone along. We wanted to have it. We recognised that GOTS was becoming. It is a global recognised symbol. It was really there were a few various certification people. I remember the Dutch one, the blue badge or whatever, that we were members of for quite a long time, and then it didn't really deliver the recognition that we wanted. It costs money to be certified. There's a lot of work involved, and you want it to mean something to the consumer. So, we'd sort of been paying the blue badge people, or blue button, whatever they were called, and it didn't really achieve that. So we redirected and repositioned ourselves to GOTS, which was actually harder to achieve. And not everything that we make complies and falls under the thing, so you have to be selective. But nonetheless, although it definitely is hard work, we think it's worth it, and we're cracking on with it, and we feel that it, as I say, because we started so long ago, and because we were engaged in doing what we thought were good things with nice family-run factories and upcycling and using handicrafts and always looking to do the right thing. I became very fascinated with hemp fabrics long before the material itself was really any use. It was really sackclothy, but we persisted. We wanted to make hemp jeans and hemp shirts, and really you were lucky if you could even sell them at Glastonbury Festival. It was that rough a product, but the sentiment was right, and it took us along the journey. So that journey really started, you know, back a long time ago with that kind of intention. And now, you know, GOTS is the recognized, certified thing that I think most consumers recognize, like your fair trade bananas and coffee, and, you know, and that's what it should be for clothing. So it's definitely been a difficult journey, but I'm glad to be sat up here telling you all about it.
Great, thanks very much. Thanks, Mark. And actually, I will just expand a little bit more on that hemp, use of hemp and other fibers. People often think that it's all about cotton, and typically these days it is all about cotton. The overwhelming majority of the fiber we use is cotton. But other fibers are there, and some other fibers are actually produced in this country or in Europe,
Well, linen,
suited to the difficult climate we have in comparison to where cotton's grown. And linen is another example.
Yeah.
So GOTS embraces all of those fibers. Natasha certifies businesses to all of those fibers. Little Green Radicals. What is it that you use? Is it predominantly cotton?
Yeah, predominantly cotton, yeah. We've always been using fair trade certified and organic cotton. But actually, we, as a brand, we only was certified as GOTS 4 years ago. And the difference, I think, is because we were always using organic cotton, but we can't use the GOTS sign as a brand. So we are using the cotton. You can buy the cotton from many manufacturers, but as a brand, we weren't certified as GOTS. So it's only 4 years ago when we committed to be inspected and go through the process, and we felt that as a brand, we want to be recognize that we are using organic, and that actually has a big impact for our consumers, because they get recognized, that they recognize this GOTS is on our brand labels, is on our care label, and it just gets us a better credibility and accountability that we are using a certified source, mainly cotton, yes.
Excellent. I think one thing that you brought out there is that you can't use the GOTS logo or any reference to GOTS unless the whole supply chain is actually certified by Natasha and her ilk, wherever the cotton is processed and manufactured. And from that point of view, the story starts from the fibre, but runs right the way through. And to accompany that story of fibre production is the guarantee that's provided by a certification to GOTS, covering every stage of the supply chain. And what often happens, because cotton, organic cotton, is not really regulated legally as a term, unlike organic food, tightly regulated, European regulation, nothing like that. So greenwash can be quite prevalent. And the only guard against it is to ensure that not only you're using organically farmed fibre, the production, but also your products on the journey from the gin or the retting plant for linen or wherever is actually according to strict standards which are inspected and certified to. So I think we've got to remember that GOTS is not legal standard, it's a voluntary sustainability standard, and we're proud of that, but it does mean that to give the guarantee that the consumer wants, you have to rely upon the certification of any one of the GOTS-approved certification bodies. So, Natasha, maybe you could go a little bit further, or maybe you've covered this enough, in which case, give us something else. It's that traceability, and we were talking before about scope certificates and transaction certificates, and it all sounds sort of quite complicated and confusing. Can you get down to the bare bones of how the traceability is achieved through the scope certificate and the transaction certificate? Because it's that sort of detail that if you're a buyer or a merchandiser or indeed developing your brand or whatever, you need to understand those terms. And I'm sure many of you will have come across them, because they're not terms exclusive to GOTS, they're terms that are generally applied. So Natasha, over to you.
Yes, so a scope certificate is a document that verifies each business that is certified. So Komodo has their own scope certificate, you have your own scope certificate, and every business that's certified to GOTS has one. It details the product categories that they are certified for, so it would be kidswear or menswear or whatever it is on the product. And it also details the process categories. So for a brand, it would be retailing or trading, whereas obviously manufacturers have different process categories on theirs. And then a transaction certificate is a document that is requested every time there's a sale between each of those certified entities. So if your manufacturer is selling you GOTS product, then they have a transaction certificate that verifies all the details of that product, the weights and the quantities, and also the country of origin for the organic fibre. And that's what upholds the traceability throughout the supply chain, because you can't request a transaction certificate without having one from your previous supplier. And not only does it uphold, as you say, the traceability of the product itself, but it also helps you understand and verify that each of those businesses or any hand that's helped create your product is also complying to those social criteria and the environmental criteria as well.
Super. So it's that covering both the bits, environmental and social, that's obviously really important. Bonnie, maybe for you first, how do you see the achieving GOTS certification supports your brand's green credentials? I think you've already told us a bit about that, but maybe if you could amplify a little bit on that.
Yeah, I believe, using the sign really helps. Just get it on our website, on our swing tags and our cab labels, so it's firmly in place in the product itself. And I think it's also in having the annual inspection really helps us as a company and the team to really understand what it's been to be organic certified. So you got the traceability. So it goes, we go back to where the products are in the UK, for example, the products in the warehouse, how it's been stored, things that you wouldn't think if you are a small business, but actually GOTS and Soil Association give us a framework to work with to make it us as a better business in terms of, from the seed we were talking about, me and my colleague Josie, we went to India to one of the organic cotton farms and we saw the seeds. And it's actually it's a GM-free seed and actually being tested. So from the very root of the source, which is the seed, and then growing across to the ginning, the spinning, the dyeing, the manufacturing, storage, logistic, all that is all covered. And it just gave us as a brand just confidence that is actually every part is being monitored and documented. And I think that's really helpful as a small business to understand it, that, yeah, I'm doing something right here and it's being recorded all along the way.
That's a really interesting point, Bonnie, that actually we're not just talking about external communications, telling the outside world, telling the consumers or telling non-governmental organisations, civil society, governments, whoever. Actually, it's also a process where internal communication can be enhanced because you know what you're doing, your colleagues know what they're doing and why they're doing it, and it fits into a bigger picture. Mark, does that echo with your experience? And one thing that's distinctive about you is that you've been around for a hell of a long time. You've been doing it before we were even invented, and GOTS has been going for 12 or 13 years. I've been involved for 10. So for someone that comes from such a deeply worked tradition of doing the right thing, you turned to GOTS. You've already said a little bit about why that was important to you. Maybe you could go a little bit more into how that process of internal communications matters, whatever the size of your company, and how much it helps you to promote when you look into the outside. Bonnie mentioned the fact that you can use the GOTS logo on your website, you can engage with consumers around the story. So how's it for you?
I think it was a sort of verification of what we're doing. As you say, having come from such a long background, and really even before I started the business, I was really a backpacker, and I had time with the hippies in India in the early 80s. I felt very privileged to have sort of caught the tail end of a previous generation, and I think my ethics and my, what I saw was quite inspiring. When you come back and trying to make something, you're searching around for a direction and an inspiration, and so I guess it gave me a lead and a bit of a direction. So then, when GOTS came along and these other verification certificating bodies, you've got to sign up, you've got to pay this, you've got to do this. And I was like, dude, everybody knows Komodo's, we're the good guys. We've been doing this for years. You don't need to tell me. But as we try and expand and go into Europe and America and, grow the business, sure, lots of new stores, like, I've never heard of you. Who are you? And we're like, oh, but, we were So you need a proof. You need a certification to sort of say we are who we say we are. We can't just talk about the good old days and stories from the past that, yeah, maybe the sort of English clients that have been our clients for ages and ages, they knew us, but a wider field doesn't know us. And then, of course, the new consumers and the people growing up, new generation, they weren't even born, when we started doing this. So you need a stamp of approval. You need something that's recognizable. What's your place in the scene, So back in the day when it was all about streetwear and house music and thing, there was a scene, and you need to be part of the scene. And you need to be in the cool shops that stock the other brands that's part of your scene. And in our sort of more recent ethical fashion scene, it's a shame we've lost People Tree recently, and other brands like Thought. Okay, we don't do kids wear, but Little Green Radicals shops that did, to kids wear and adult. So it's like, oh, okay, we all belong together. We sit together because we share the same values. You invest in the same process, and you fit into a kind of profile. And what we found was that so like you take like a good-sized market town, a university town, anywhere across the UK, across Europe, across anywhere. And those towns that used to have the London store that would stock kind of Carnaby Street style and DMs and a bit of mod wear and a bit of punk wear and a bit of we're the London store. They evolved into like more sensitive, more creative eco stores. And they would stock brands from Europe, I don't know, Knowledge Cotton and in today's world, Nudie Jeans and brands that were clearly heading in a direction, doing the right thing, wanting to show we're part of a new scene. And so we belong to that, and that's, and to fit into that, having a GOT certification was an important part of just showing everybody that you're serious.
Maybe just to wrap up, because I think we've had some really interesting insights from the two people at the sharp end of the business, whereas, if you like, we're sort of bit parts, but we're important bit parts. We're running towards the end of the allocated time that we've got to discuss, and I wanted to just round it off with a couple of really exciting words that I think will motivate us all and are really part of the lingua franca of fashion at the moment, and that's due diligence. Because, of course, in this sort of expert audience, amongst all of you colleagues, and I hope you're thinking about the questions that you want to put, due diligence is at the heart of it all. It's being able to say now, with your hand on your heart, as Mark has always done through the evolution of Komodo, that you can trust me. I'm telling you the right thing. It's based on good evidence. It really makes sense. No one can trust you in global markets. As it happens, just in parenthesis, GOTS is recognised by the USDA as an organic standard, unlike in Europe or anywhere else. So, GOTS has that government recognition. But in terms of the due diligence requirements, they're coming at us from all sides, not least our own government in the UK, and more importantly, in Europe, with a new directive now in force. So the promise that Mark has always made and delivered on, the promise that Bonnie is trying to get engaged on, ultimately the promise that Natasha ensures you can make, is the due diligence that's required by a robust standard and a good scheme. So the standard is GOTS, production and processing. The scheme is Natasha, the certification process, and the businesses at the sharp end increasingly coming to GOTS certification for the reasons that both of these successful businesses have outlined. So what I want to do now, I'm not going to give a chance for any of the panel to come back because the clock is ticking away. We have a huge timer in front of us. So I want to open it up for questions. And if I don't get a question by the time I've counted to 10, and I'm not saying how fast I'm going to count. It could be slow, it could be fast. If I don't get a good question, I'm going to ask Natasha to tell us a bit more about due diligence. So, come on. Any questions? Or have we proved so conclusive? Thank you very much. Do you have a roving mic? I think you'll find one if you go to Amina.
No, just thank you very much.
Can you just introduce yourself? And don't forget, the acoustics are really bad in here. But say who you are.
Hi, my name is Danielle, and I'm a founder of a fashion brand. called Sezo. My question is, I would like clarification in terms of if you can display the GOTS logo on your website if you are sourcing clothes from manufacturers using GOTS fabrics.
Right, I'll just quickly give one answer, and then maybe Natasha can come in. You can only use it without certification if you're only, and I put that in quotes because it's really hard, only a retailer. If you're involved in any wholesale activity, then you must be subject to the process of certification that Natasha does. Is that right, Natasha? I should know, but you're the expert.
No, that is right. So retailers who have any B2B activity, they must be registered with a certification body. So if you contact, say, the Soil Association, we can talk you through that process. And then there's a limit. If you make over 25,000 euros annually, then you're required to have full certification.
Great sort of question that shows that you know what you're doing and you're interested in finding out more. Who else would like to...
Sorry, was that for a retailer or for a manufacturer?
Sorry?
For a retailer.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Give you another second or two. Okay, Natasha, back to you then. Tell us about due diligence. And then I'm going to ask for a little bit of insight from Bonnie and Mark, because they've heard of due diligence. They know it's around the corner, and they're preparing for it actively, as any business here has to prepare for it. So, Natasha, tell us a bit more about due diligence.
So due diligence quite literally means with due care or with proper care and attention. And I think that considering that, as you mentioned, the GOTS standard covers so many things: chemical due diligence, social due diligence, environmental due diligence. Just certifying to GOTS is a form of due diligence, and following the standard is providing your business with due diligence across so many different areas. It's a very holistic standard to certify against. In a more practical sense, we do list the 6-step framework for due diligence, which I think is set by the OECD guidelines, that can work as a starting point for businesses. And it also is adaptable to this kind of changing risk landscapes of businesses that are facing. And then, of course, there's the upcoming legislations, the EU Due Diligence Directive, and just having that awareness of your supply chain and everything that's going into your product is going to be really beneficial when those laws come into place, and providing due diligence in that way.
Very good. So obviously due diligence, I can't even say it now, not only is a hard acoustic, but also I can't speak any longer. So that's the sort of technical side of due diligence from the legislative point of view. Bonnie, from your perspective as a business, what is the due diligence directive or the parallel legislation that's coming in the UK? How is it moving you and your business to do things differently, or do you feel quite comfortable that actually you're going to meet the requirements?
I think sometimes we feel too comfortable, I think, with what our factories give us. So actually having a due diligence means, you are in charge of the product that's being given to you. So as a brand, we have to have due diligence, making sure the products that's been produced meets the chemical requirements. It could be the humans, the workers' rights, and as such. And also, I think sometimes, which I sometimes didn't recognize, is about our workers in the UK, that, about health, about safety, fire hazards, in our office, things that you don't think there's any risk in an office building, but there are some risks which we didn't account for. But GOTS was able to give us that framework to work with, how we complain in terms of workplace, where is the fire exits, things that you take for granted actually in the UK. But actually having that framework helps us as a company to move forward.
Got it. So it's sort of supporting you being better because it's demanding that you show you are better and you wouldn't lie to anybody.
Yeah.
One thing I would like to flag up at this point is that GOTS has a very comprehensive, information-rich, and I hesitate to say rather hard to navigate website. And on there, if you just do a Google search on GOTS due diligence guidelines, you'll see that GOTS has produced a guide to due diligence meeting the requirements, and it's on the website, easy to download. And I think it would help sort of amplify, reinforce the message that Natasha or Bonnie have given much more brief, much more succinctly, if you like. But as with GOTS, it's a legal standard. It comes supported by lots of relevant detail that you can easily access, not just the standard, not just the due diligence requirements, but another really intriguingly named document. It's called the Conditions for Use of GOTS Signs, CUGS. And what a dry document that sounds, but therein lies all of the rules that, if you like, the questioner put. What do you have to say? How can you say it? What are the conditions? It isn't that long, it is dry, but it is useful. So thinking about that due diligence stuff, Mark, for you, and thinking about what Bonnie just said, what would you add to that? The way in which GOTS can or can't, or how it's helping empower you to deliver the promise in those requirements?
I think when we have a new initiative that we want to put the signage on, I think we'll probably call you up and check our homework before we go too far, because as you say, your documents is a little dry, and we wouldn't want to be caught offside. So we try and do the best we can, and then present it and get it, approved by the head teacher before we can proceed with the story. But of course, you're wanting to convey to the public as best you can, look what we're doing, and that, you can have faith in it and trust it, and, so on. So, it's not enough just that a factory approaches and says, oh, we've got GOTS cotton, or we're a GOTS supplier. You've got to be careful about later on finding about but there's one little piece of the jigsaw missing, and now actually you're offside and you can't do it, and so we've learned a little bit the hard way with some suppliers that the fabric was GOTS, the factory's GOTS, the printer wasn't GOTS, the washer wasn't GOTS, the dyer wasn't, and now you've got a missing piece in the chain, and the chain breaks, and that is a big issue and a problem that we've therefore had to, a lot of things that we thought we were going to present as being GOTS, we've had to withdraw the thing. So we're learning as we go along. It changes all the time. You do have to watch out for suppliers that say yes, 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 when actually it's only yes, yes, no. Nice. So we're learning as we go along, and sometimes we'd like to think a bit of mitigation could help, but I'm not sure how much mitigation we can hope for. But it's as I say, it's a journey. It's ongoing, and the trick is just to really win the confidence of the customers that they can feel confident buying this product. Usually, a GOTS product is going to be £5, £10 more expensive in the shop. A T-shirt, a shirt, it just is going to cost a little bit more, and that is the hurdle which we're all trying to get across. Is it better to that's the scales of the whole thing, and it's really, I think, maybe what I'd like GOTS to do even more in a way that maybe the fair trade bananas and coffee have somehow managed to achieve, is that it really is persuading the customer to pay that bit more to buy a better product.
I guess that's a matter of reaching out and explaining what the benefits of GOTS certification are, and I think we covered a lot of them. I think in the closing half a minute, a quick comment from Bonnie and something from Natasha to wind us off, because we've got to get going. I see that we only have another, how long is that? 5? Oh, we've got 5 minutes. Yeah, that's not so bad at all. So, Bonnie.
Yes, for me personally, me and Josie went to India to see an organic cotton farm, and we were in October time, so it was harvesting time. So it's wonderful actually to see the cotton plants in the field. And what strikes me, it was my first time visiting a cotton farm like that, is actually they grow other crops in an organic farm. They don't only grow monochrome crop, which is cotton, but they grow crops, lentils, pulses, pumpkins, which actually feed the farmers that grows this cotton. So they have the cotton crop, which is an expensive crop which they can sell, but they also grow other crops which they actually can consume themselves, and actually eating organic crops is quite good for them. So, and actually that has such big benefits for them. And I think for me, to understand that, we're really supporting their livelihoods really at that level, that they are getting, they are able to grow something which they can get money from, but actually support their own livelihoods as well at the same time.
Excellent. Natasha, a little final thought.
Yeah, just to raise that, obviously we've talked a lot about cotton, but in the UK we have a lot of wool that can be organic, and it's my favourite subject to talk about. So we're really hoping to see more growth with organic wool in the UK, and we're working closely with the Wool Board. So it's not only the usual fabrics that you'll think of, it's also the wools, the linens, the hemps that can be grown more locally and also grown organically.
I love that, reminding me of things that I should have said right from the beginning. And wool, I would completely agree with you, Natasha. It really is a hugely undervalued fibre with immensely good hygienic properties and also a really good sustainability story if you're talking about a wet country which is great at producing grass and thereby have the sheep roaming the fields waiting to have their clip taken. But it sort of reminded me that I failed in what I thought was my duty to try and uncover all of the benefits of GOTS certification. Of course, that's impossible in such a short space of time, and particularly it's about the benefits that businesses see and why they are engaging, and therefore why we're getting upwards of 15,000 certified businesses around the world. But it is this question of the multifaceted benefits that Bonnie particularly reminded me of when she reminded me that, of course, cotton is grown in rotation. Other crops are grown too, and those other crops feed the family and nourish the community in a way that was really important in getting livelihoods on a better footing than we have at the moment. And if you're aware, as I'm sure you are, as aware, if not more so, of three key words as well as the two ones of due diligence, it's the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs. And if you look at each of those, and there is a leaflet on this, on the GOTS website, just do GOTS SDGs and you'll find it. Every one of those Sustainable Development Goals is supported by being GOTS certified. Some a little bit less than others, some a lot more. And so, for example, on the social criteria, there are very significant benefits to a number of the SDGs. That's a really important benefit. But as we wind up this session, I'd really like to thank Pure for giving this chance to have an opportunity to tell at least a few people at Pure about what GOTS is, why it does it, and what motivates businesses to be engaged with it and do something about it. And I really thank you for participating. And I don't know, your enthusiasm, you don't seem that enthusiastic, but, give me a little bit of a wave if you are. Well, it's reluctant. But also, thank you very much to Mark and Bonnie and Natasha for really giving such a good account of why they're involved and working towards GOTS achieving its mission to make the world a better place through organic textiles. So thank you very much and look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks.